With that, I'd like to welcome Eleni Kahusak to the stage. Eleni's from United World College, SEA, in Singapore, and we're going to have an approach to hybrid learning here. So Eleni, welcome to the stage.
Good afternoon. It's hard to compete with the Hilton lunch, so I have a very small crowd, which is quite nice for me, and it feels almost like a classroom. I think I'm the first teacher to be on stage who teaches middle school, and I have a background in teaching primary school. So we've heard from a lot of tech coordinators, a lot of people implementing amazing programs, and we've heard from some high school people as well, but my presentation is going to be a little bit more through a primary lens and maybe a bit more upbeat and probably quite fast, because I have a lot of things to tell you. Okay, hybrid learning in mathematics. I teach right now at the United World College of Southeast Asia in Singapore. It's my first year there, and I'm teaching specifically math and science. So I'm going to talk to you about math. That was the topic that Joanna asked me to speak about, but everything I explained today that I do in my classroom can be used in the science classroom as well and in any subject. So hopefully you'll gain some valuable little token that you can take back and use in your own classroom or with the teachers that you work with if you're not in a classroom directly. Before this, I taught grade 5, and it's a really interesting transition from the primary school to middle school, and I'll talk a bit about what that's done to my teaching. I've only been in teaching for 5 years, so I've been lucky enough to spend that entire time in a one-to-one environment. I don't know what it's like to teach without kids having their own laptops, and I don't know what it's like to teach without a projector that works and awesome audio equipment and all the fun technology that we use today. I do remember what it was like when I was a kid and when we didn't have all that stuff, but I've never taught that way. So a look into my classroom. You'll see different things happening at different times. I'm going to show you some examples of what we do. I'm going to show you some examples of where and when the kids engage in learning. And it might look like this. I think in this picture I'm teaching the kids how to play cribbage, which is a pretty complicated math game, but really fun with cards. In another instance, you might come in and find that I'm off screen here to the right, but I'm at my desk and I'm wildly excited about building my Minecraft house, and I'm showing the kids what I'm doing on the projector, and they are all doing the same thing. Today I want to hit 4 major topics with you, and I'm going to rush through them as fast as I can. First, we'll look at some learning interactions, how the learning happens in my classroom. We're going to talk about how I help the kids understand the different elements of learning. And please remember, everything I talk about when I refer to math, it can be the same in any subject that you teach. Then I'll talk a bit about the technology that I use and how I'm starting to transform learning experiences through technology and how that's led me into the realm of gamification, which is pretty new to me, but I'll give you just a little flavor of what I'm doing in my classroom. And then we're going to follow up with the next presenter who will also talk about gamification, which is exciting. So Joanna presented this topic to me, hybrid learning, and I've heard the term many times, but I didn't know exactly what it was, and I actually had to look up, what does hybrid learning mean? I think that's because like I said, when I started teaching, I was already immersed in a technology-rich teaching environment, and so hybrid learning is almost a redundant term nowadays. It basically means you're bringing together different types of interactions within the classroom. In a traditional model, the teacher would deliver curriculum to the students, and the interaction was almost entirely focused on teacher-student. And in a current classroom, we see different interactions. So student to student being a collaborative experience. Student to self is actually just more student singular. It just means students learning on their own, using the internet, using resources, doing independent inquiries, and really taking ownership over their own learning journey. So when you breed those together, you get hybrid learning, which I think is what we all see in our 21st century learning classrooms already. Regardless of technology, you'll notice in that last picture I didn't include any technology. It's just about the ways that we interact with each other, the kids and the teachers. So in 21st century classrooms, we have a great mix of these different interactions. The technology, of course, is important, and it's sort of gels everything together, it makes everything a lot better. So I could talk a whole 20 minutes about how technology has changed teacher-student interaction, how it's changed the student-to-student collaborative interactions, and how it's changed specifically the student-independent learning. That's something that I think we're all quite aware of, and it's really powerful how those interactions have changed. So the next thing, I want to talk to you about 2 of my teacher goals. And this is kind of stepping back, broad, year-wide, big picture. What is my biggest goal in teaching every year that I start a new year? And it's always to help students demonstrate their understanding, to demonstrate their learning, not just to me, but to each other, to their parents, to their community. If a child can demonstrate what they're understanding, then I can understand what they've learned. So to do this, I start off every year teaching the students the elements of mathematics, and I do this in science as well, and there are 3 of them. We talk a lot about knowledge, what it means to acquire facts, figures, memorize formulas, gather knowledge from as many resources as we can. We also talk about what it means to develop a skill set, and then eventually what it means to demonstrate understanding. And the traditional model of this is a pyramid, and it is progressive. And when I was in school, I learned these things. I learned that these were the different ways that my learning engagements were helping me develop an understanding, but that was always the pinnacle. It was always the goal, was to get to the understanding. So I kind of challenge this a little bit with my students, and I ask them if they really need to always start at the bottom. Do you need to know all the names of all the things and how everything works before you can start working on your skills? Do you need to have a precise skill set where you're quite efficient at the skills you're working with before you can move on to understanding? And I think what we found through a couple of years of analyzing this is that it doesn't need to be a pyramid like that. It can actually be quite different the way that it works. So we'll look at each level independently and quickly. Knowledge acquisition. This is a picture that would show what my school experience was like 20 years ago. When I was in the classroom, teachers delivered knowledge, teachers had all the knowledge, and students absorbed it in different amounts depending on how interested they were. Now, knowledge acquisition looks more like these things that we've been talking about for the last day and a half. So Khan Academy has amazing content delivery, videos, BrainPop you heard about yesterday. We use an online math textbook. I use Cool Math a lot because their lessons are excellent, and these are just ways to deliver the same content, get the knowledge from one place into the hands of students working independently or collaboratively. So technology has made this more exciting, more engaging, definitely more fun. The actual transfer of knowledge is still the same, but it's definitely a more exciting way to do it. The same is true for skill development. This represents skill development for me when I was in grade 5 math, grade 6 math. If I was lucky, my teacher might have put a little cartoon in the corner, but it was pretty dry, pretty unengaging, and I just had to repeat steps over and over again until I memorized them. And we're all familiar with this skill and drill style of skill development. In my classroom now, I have much more interesting, fun, exciting, engaging tools. And I think most of you have some awareness of what's available for skill development. And we like to call these math games, but this is quite different than gamification. To me, this is just digital skill practice. And it truly has the same outcome at the end of the day of kids developing their skills as the worksheets used to. It's much more engaging, it's much more fun, it's interactive. The kids do get feedback from the computer, which changes the realm a little bit. We can't get feedback from a worksheet. But at the end of the day, the kids have developed or practiced their skills. So both of those areas, the knowledge and the skills, have changed a lot. And it's a lot more fun to be in math. One of the things that I've noticed, though, is that not all kids are always engaged, and we still have a huge problem of kids feeling like they're not good at math, feeling like they're not math people, feeling like they can't do math, and giving up at an early age on math. So my second goal, big picture, step back, the whole year, my second most powerful goal is to engage and empower students, especially the ones who don't like math. And I think that's why I've ended up in middle school. People often ask me, Why do you teach 10 to 14-year-olds? They're the craziest kids. You have to be nuts to want to teach that age. And sometimes I do feel a little bit crazy for choosing to teach grade 6. But I've realized lately that there is a reason behind it, and it's because this goal means so much to me. So in primary school, currently, a lot of schools are doing cross-curricular, transdisciplinary, really conceptual understanding styles of approaching the curriculum. They're sort of throwing out subject-based curriculum and they're mixing everything up, which gives kids a better understanding of how the world works, but it also takes away the stigma of specific subjects and how good they are at those subjects. So a kid coming out of primary school right now, hopefully, doesn't have a fixed mindset about being bad in a certain area. But when they enter middle school, and maybe this isn't true in all schools, but eventually they're going to enter a system where they have to go to math class and they have to go to the science lab. And in my case, when the kids come to me in September, that's the first time they've ever entered a math room, where all you do in there is math. And it's the first time they've ever entered a science lab. And some of them come in thinking they're not going to be good at it right away. Some of them, after the first 3 months, are pretty enthusiastic, but when they get that first report card and it's not what they want it to be, they immediately decide, I'm not going to do well in math. I'm not going to do well in science. And for me, I've actually noticed that it can be a life changer. That one time, switching from a very open community field learning in primary into the subject-based classrooms, being told or being made to feel like you're just not good at something. So engaging and empowering students and worrying about those students who are not very confident is one of my focuses. And I've realized that if they're not engaged in math or don't feel like math is their thing, they're not really going to like that knowledge acquisition, watching the Khan Academy. They're not really going to like skill builder games with all the flashy animations because they actually just don't like math yet, or they don't think they're good at it. So some of that technology doesn't work on some kids. And I noticed this because I'm a fond believer in mathletics. I love what mathletics does, and it's amazing for the majority of my class as a homework tool. Kids will go home and I'll assign 10 questions in a mathletics assignment. The middle range of my class will all do it. They'll, feel confident about their skills. The high-end kids, the overachievers, will do 10 more activities and come back and show me all their results. And the kids who struggle with math won't do it. They won't do mathletics. And I've never understood, how can you not be engaged in this? It's so tuned into what you like, and it's designed for you, and it's fun, and it's flashy. And I hadn't really thought about the fact that if they don't like math, they're not going to like these tools that we are using. So I started to think about the understanding. And for me, what seems to have worked is helping kids understand the difference between the 3 elements of math. So whenever we do an activity, I tell them what we're doing. Are we acquiring knowledge? Are we memorizing formulas? Are we working on skills? Or are we demonstrating an understanding? And I found sort of what I feel is a bit of a secret, and that is that a lot of kids want to enter this realm through the understanding element, not through the skills element and not through the knowledge element. So we flipped that pyramid around in my classroom, and now we just talk about it as 3 equal areas. So the understanding area, though, doesn't have a lot of resources for us as teachers to actively use in our classroom. There isn't a lot of stuff. If you think back to when you studied math, or even when you teach math right now, we tend to do the knowledge, the skills, and then the test. And the test often just says, what do you know? What did you learn? What facts can you tell me? Or what names of shapes do you know? And then what skills, what can you do with that knowledge? It doesn't ever say, what do you understand about this concept? So I've started in my classroom really focusing on this understanding. And we don't do a lot of tests, but test taking really does focus on the knowledge and the skills. Understanding can be a bit more interactive. So how are we going to bring this into our classrooms? There isn't a lot out there when you start looking for ways to explore understanding, but I know that it has to be immersive, interactive, exploratory, fun, and creative, especially because my target audience is the kids who don't like math. So if you're familiar with any math education TED Talks and people out there who are really pushing this new style of curriculum, you might know Dan Meyer. He has some 3-act math problems that are quite fun and engaging. And a few people are starting to explore with immersive, interactive, multiplayer, multi-level games. And this is very different than the skill builder games that I've mentioned earlier. So I started to explore these areas. Now on my slides I have a lot of information about 5 that I've chosen that are award-winning games that I've played with the kids, and they're really excellent. I'm going to just breeze through them, but you can go to the SlideShare at the end of this conference and check out the ones that you want to learn more about. I'm not going to explain every one because we just don't have time. Ludwig is a physics game. Limbo is a critical thinking game that you might have heard of. Kids really like the puzzle aspect of this one. Co's Journey is developed in the United States and it's mapped to the Common Core curriculum. Portal is a physics again. I like to do things that tie physics and math together to bring my 2 subject areas together. And then Minecraft, which I already mentioned. So again, sorry to just flip through those really quickly. I wanted to tell you all about every single one of them because I love all those games, but we just don't have time for that. One thing that they all have in common though is that they take months to play and they don't really ever end. You just keep challenging yourself. Many of them have applications where teachers can map curriculum right inside the game. So you can decide which concepts of math the kids are going to work through at which time and in which order. For Minecraft, it's pretty open-ended. If you don't know about Minecraft, it's basically in its single-player creative mode, it's just virtual Lego. You can build stuff in there and explore a physical world of geometric shapes, which is kind of neat. So all of these tools I think are fun. I like them. My kids are playing them. I play some of them. But there's still a really good question. And this was proposed yesterday on Twitter by Mr. Bray, and he said, how do we know when technology provides transformational change? Well, how do I know that all those games and all of those immersive worlds that I'm exposing my kids to actually are hitting that target of developing their understanding? I'm hoping that if I develop their understanding first, the skills and the knowledge will come later, but how do I know if that's actually working? So I've spent some time thinking about what I do in the classroom mapped onto the technology integration matrix, which some of you might know. Basically, across the top, it just goes from entry-level technology use, using technology tools to do processes that we have always done, like word processing an essay instead of writing it, or using a projector instead of just giving a lecture with your voice. Entry-level technology is used by the teacher, and it's just a way of doing things that you used to do through technology. It works its way all the way across to transformation, and transformation is when the activity itself is created because of technology. So it's a learning experience that can't happen without the technology. Down the other side of the matrix, we have the learner, the words that describe what's happening with the learners. So it starts with learners being active with that technology, then being collaborative, then being constructive, creating things. The authentic refers to making connections in the real world, and then goal-directed is when the students direct their learning experience themselves. So I've mapped out what happens in my math classroom on this matrix, and the knowledge acquisition and the skill builders with all of those Web 2.0 tools that I showed you earlier really fall in this first half of the matrix, which is still an important area. I like to work in the entire matrix. My goal is not always to be in this far corner. But watching videos, doing skill drill practice, that all still falls in entry-level, active, and collaborative experiences for my students. The conceptual awareness comes in a little bit more when we start to go outside of the classroom, and Khan Academy and some things can bring areas of awareness for my students from outside of the classroom. So that one falls into also adaptation and infusion. Kids start using some technologies to meet their needs. And then the demonstration of understanding, which I've found to be exhibited through the gamification and the immersive game worlds, that really is transformational, because there's no other way that I can get my kids to explain to me what they've learned or what they understand without those game worlds. It also can be very goal-directed by the students, where they can choose how to show me what they've learned. Next, I just have a little example of a child's Minecraft project where I feel that he sufficiently demonstrated his understanding of the concept of proportional relationships. This was a child who couldn't do the skill practices at the beginning of the unit, couldn't tell me the terminology or the right names or anything, felt quite disempowered in math, but did an amazing video.
This is an overview of my Minecraft project. It has an overall area of 4,028. Hi, now we're going to compare this project to my floor plan. Here it says there is 10 blocks for the width and 46 blocks for the length. So let's go have a look to see if that's correct. As you can see, my floor plan is accurate. A quick tutorial on ratios, rates and unit rates. A ratio compares two things, 4 red flowers to 3 yellow flowers. A rate is something per something. 6 sheep per 3 water buckets. A unit rate is something per 1 of something. 3 sheep per 1 water bucket. We're going to talk about ratios. Ratios compare two things. In all of the houses combined, there are 72 bookshelf blocks and 24 seats. The ratio of bookshelf blocks to seats is 72 to 24. This can be simplified, making it more simple and easy to work with. 3 to 1. Just because the number is bigger doesn't mean it has more value in ratios. La-dee-dee-da-dee-dee-da. You boy! Who is that? Is that Mr. Sun? Yes, it is. Figure out the population of each island with the ratios I will give you. I just need to finish my tour quickly. Okay, then figure it out. 49 flowers, 7 buckets. That means each flower needs 1/8 of a bucket. That's a rate, by the way. Let's go to finish this ratio problem that Mr. Sun gave us. I hope you had fun on the tour today. Bye, Mr. Sun. Hi, Mr. Moon. Mr. Sun gave us this information. This is for the housing area, the Gardens of Life, and the Chief Hut. The population is 442. First, we need to add this up and find out how many parts are in the problem. 26. Now we need to find out how many times 26 goes into 442. 17, which means 1 equals 17. 1 part equals 17. So, 2 times 17 will find out the answer for the Gardens of Life, which is 34.
So this was just an example of success, but specifically success of children demonstrating their understanding. The child doesn't do calculations. He doesn't show me that he can multiply or that he can simplify a ratio using numbers, and he doesn't always use the right words, but it's a proof that without the knowledge and without the skills, there's still a way to develop an awareness and an understanding of math conceptually. So just back to my 2 teacher goals to wrap up. My first one is engagement, getting the kids engaged in math, and I feel that if they know what activities are building their knowledge, what activities are developing their skills, and what activities are really exploring their understanding, that they can own their own learning. So you might walk into my classroom at some point and a child might say to you, I'm working on skills today because I know that's my one area of weakness. I actually am really good at explaining what this concept means, and I have some great, terminology in my memory of what all the things are called, but I really have to work on my skills. And when they feel like the entire thing isn't too challenging, there's just one part to work on, they have a bit more confidence. So engagement and owning the experience, for me, is a positive feedback cycle where the more they're engaged, the more they own the learning, and the more that they own the learning, the more that they become engaged in it. The same is true for empowerment and direction. So the more often that I can allow students to direct their own learning, the more empowered that they will feel, and that goes along with confidence as well. And the more confident they feel, the more they rise to the occasion of directing their own learning. So for me, the success has come from breaking down the elements of learning. knowledge, skills, and understanding. It's really important for kids to be able to differentiate those and to know that they're all equal, and to use lots of different tools to help them with each area. That's it for me.